Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to Axiom Curb. It's Sunday evening, the 11th of February, 2000, on this, the year of our Lord, 2018. Today we've got, on Axiom Curb, we've got the topic of climate and the environment for you tonight. I'm your host, I'm Predator Geoff. With us today, we've got PJ. Hello, PJ. How you doing, mate?
Geoff, good stuff. I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Pleased to hear you're okay there. We've got Lopi. You all right, Lopi?
All right, love. How are you?
I'm absolutely Andy Wendy's tickle pink over the moon and back again. Jockey shorts and Y fronts, Lopi. Good to hear you're doing okay. And we've got the one and only Stav from the Kebabada House. Stavros, you all right, mate?
Yes, thank you, peeps. All right, Geoff. Yeah, fine. Apart from, today's probably a day we want to forget. But anyway,
Yeah.
onwards and upwards. Yeah, all right, mate. Let's
Okie dokie.
let's get cracking, shall we?
Yes, I hope things go a bit better for you, and you've had a bit of a rotten day, as I know, Stav, but things will improve, hopefully. Right, tonight we're talking about the environment. We're talking about what's going on in the environment in our strange world with all these dodgy things going on, like chemtrails and all this sort of environmental toxins and pollutants that we're being bombarded with by the establishment and dodgy corporations and things. We're also going to talk about climate change. Is it real? Is it real? I don't know. What's your thoughts? Have you got any thoughts on it, folks? What about you, Lopi? What do you think of climate change? Is it real? Is the planet getting hotter?
Well, I don't know about it getting hotter, but there is proof that the planet Earth is going away from the sun.
We're going away from the sun, so it would sort of logically
speaking, it would not get hotter, it would get colder.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. We're in, as far as I know, we're in a thing called an elliptical orbit, which means it's not a circular orbit around the sun. It's sort of an oblong orbit. So at some times, hey, Lopi?
It's egg-shaped.
That's right. So at some points we'll be closer to the sun, and at other points we'll be drifting away from the sun. Yeah, there is that. And I think also one of the things that makes a difference to our climate is the sunspot activity, which many of us know that happens in 11-year cycles. But of course, there's other cyclical periods that affect our solar activity and climate on Earth. We know that you've got different cycles like 40-year cycles and 130-year cycles and stuff like this. But anyway, we're in a period of what they say is global warming. It's what is technically known as an interglacial period. But that interglacial period is also within an ice age, because we've got polar ice caps, and that only happens in an ice age. We've been in an ice age for, I don't know how long, something like 1 million years or something. But we're in a slight warming trend. Or are we coming to an end of that trend? I've been reading lots of articles lately that's been saying that we're actually cooling now, and we could be entering a period of solar minimum and cooling for about, it could start around about 2021 is one of the articles I read. Another one said about 2050. They all seem to contradict themselves rather a lot, but I don't know. I think the global warming stuff that the alarmism that they've been talking about is just
definitely alarmism, Geoff.
Eh?
It's definitely alarmism. I can show you a little graph if you want.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, if you want to get that up on the screen, PJ, that would be useful. I think they've been basically taking the mickey and trying to worry us about global warming for the sake of carbon taxes. That is my take on it personally. What's this you've got here? 1/3 of man's climate influence since 1750, but no global warming for 18 years and 9 months. Now, I've heard thank you for that, PJ. I've heard contradictory stuff going around. The powers that be want to tell us that the ice caps are melting and the seas rising and all this sort of stuff. But I've seen an article recently that said that for the last what was it for our Arctic ice over the last 5 years or something, Arctic ice has increased by about 42%. Now that's massive. If that's true, then we can't believe what the powers that be are telling us. So there's all this contradictory evidence out there. Apparently there's 30,000 odd scientists which dispute the official narrative of global warming as well. They don't like people to know about that, but there's an awful lot of evidence against. And you've got two types of ways of assessing the climate. The ones that advocate global warming, they seem to use these things called climate models. Now, these climate models don't seem to be very good at predicting. They seem to get all the predictions wrong from what I've been seeing. They're not very accurate at all. And then you've got the other ones which believe that changes in climate is attributable to the solar activity. People like Jeremy Corbyn's brother, for example, Piers Corbyn. He's more along the lines of the solar measurements rather than the climate models. So you've got all these different factors going on from different people. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about was CO2. Now, a lot of you have been probably aware that, or have been told that CO2 is what's causing our climate warming. Now, thank you, PJ, for putting that up on the screen. What does that say? GRIP, Greenland ice core data, 50,000 years, including the recent Holocene interglacial period, 100-year and millennial steps. As you can see there, I'm trying to work this out. Okay, so where the blue's going down, that's where it's below 0 Celsius, and where the blue's going up above that line, that is the warming trend. And obviously that's the years along the top there. So year 2000, we're above average, presumably 0's average on that scale. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, PJ. Yeah, so we're told that CO2 is the dreaded enemy, that we're pumping all this CO2 from man-made emissions, from burning our oil and stuff in the cars and jets and things like that. We're told that this is the enemy. Now, is it really the enemy? Because I've seen data that suggests that, in fact, CO2 doesn't actually increase global warming. In fact, global warming causes the opposite is true. Global warming causes CO2 to go up, but about 800 years later. So we get a warming period, and then 800 years later, you get a boost in CO2 levels, a big spike in CO2 levels. Now, that would contradict what the mainstream's telling us. There's some very good videos on YouTube about that. I've seen one by some man that went to the UK government and explained all this. He was an Australian geologist. If I could get that, if I could find that for us in a minute.
That chart, the last chart you were seeing, Geoff, that was, well, you could say for the past 1,200 years it's just flatlined.
You what? Sorry, PJ. In 1,200 years, it's just flatlined.
It flatlined, yeah. and they're predicting, you know, all this global warming stuff were just pretty much based on that. But it was just flatlining for a good 1,200 years or 1,000 years. You could probably say 1,000 years, but you know, in that surprise.
Right. Well, yeah. This is the thing. I mean, it goes up, it goes down. Climate change is normal. So yes, there is climate change. It's been going on since the beginning of life on Earth, as far as we know, or in fact, before the beginning of life on Earth. So climate change is a cyclical thing that's been going on for since the year dot, which is perfectly normal. The question is, what is actually attributable to mankind? Now, yes, I think we probably have had a very, very marginal and slight effect since the Industrial Revolution in the last couple of 100 years, since we've been burning all these fossil fuels, or what they call fossil fuels, which aren't necessarily fossil fuels, but there probably has been a very, very slight increase. But remember that CO2 is not a pollutant as such. It is in fact a natural gas. Plants use it. Plants inhale CO2, and they photosynthesize. Well, they don't inhale it; they absorb CO2, and they photosynthesize, and of course produce the oxygen that we breathe with it. So without CO2, the plants couldn't live. So it's a necessary natural gas. Now, so it's not actually a pollutant as such. They'll tell you it's a pollutant, but it's not a pollutant. It's a natural gas. It is, however, poisonous at strong enough concentrations. So, for example, if you rebreathed CO2 and if you had a small volume of air to breathe, for example, if you kept breathing it in and breathing it out within a small space, a small confined restricted space, that of course would increase to the point that it would become poisonous to you. So if you've got, I think, more than about 3% CO2, it would actually start to act as a poison, and it would probably kill you. But it's not technically a pollutant, which is what they're telling us it is. It's a lie. It's not a pollutant at all. So there's lots of contradictory evidence going around. I would say that probably it's been cooling for a while now. I think the interglacial period, we can safely say, is on the back foot, and we've already entered a cooling period. Things are starting to cool down now, so I don't think the government can any longer justify their continual carbon taxation on us, which they put on your fuel bills and things like that. Any thoughts about climate change, Stav? Anything that you'd like to bring up about it?
Well, did do something a few years ago, and basically was following this global cooling trend, and the transition between smaller cycles, whereas the scientists just want to look at a hockey stick by Al Gore and say that the sun's got nothing to do with the temperature on Earth, and it's anthropogenics, global warming, and we could perhaps the sun wouldn't freeze if we never had a sun. So that's modern science for you. Let's just say corporate science, shall we? And we all know they serve. So some scientists are genuine, some are just want to make money.
Maybe government paid shills.
Yeah, that's right. Carbon taxes and all the rest. And man, it's such a dreadful thing. Anyway, and it's all man's fault. If we'd have all been flooded out by now underwater if we'd have gone on what Al Gore said by now, because apparently the Arctic ice cap would have been melted by now completely. There'd be no ice at all, according to Al Gore's prophecy from the 1990s. So there we are. There is something I'll just very quickly share with anybody who's interested, because I covered this quite extensively quite a few years ago, and I believe we're entering a maunder-and-dalton-minimun period. I'll just quickly share this screen. Oh, that's the wrong one.
Just before we carry on, Stav, I wanted to mention that Stav mentioned anthropogenic climate change or anthropogenic global warming. Anthropogenic means man-made. So basically, it's what part of the global warming trend that's been attributable to mankind's activities since we've been here on planet Earth, or what they'd like you to believe. Okay, yeah, we're getting something on screen here, Stav.
Yeah, well, basically, it's about, this is Ice Age now, so it can be a bit. Have you got that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, you mentioned him earlier, that Mr. Corbyn, he's an astrophysicist.
Can we go full screen on that, please, Stav?
No, it's full screen, yeah.
Oh, right, it's not showing up as full screen on my end, but yeah, carry on, we can see it anyway.
All right. I would suggest you go to these sites if you want to learn more about what's going on. I'll just quickly skim through the title bits.
That's Jeremy Corbyn's. That's Corbyn's.
Piers Corbyn, the astrophysicist. Yeah, that's right.
Carry on,
mean, he's predicted little ice age, maunder-and-dalton circulation patterns are emerging. We'll leave links. And you can see these here are solar cycles. Each one of these is 11 years from there to there. From there to there. From there to there, 11 years. One complete cycle is not 11 years, it's 22. 22 years is one cycle, because just before the peak, or just after the peak of the solar cycle, 11 years, the sun's polar regions change. The polarity reverses. So to come back here, you've got to go one, because it goes from north to south peak there, the polar region of the sun changes. You've got to go all there, around there, for it to change back to it was there. So in actual fact, the solar cycle of the sun is 22 years, because one complete cycle. 11 years is only half of it. But each one of these...
I was thinking it was 11-year cycles, and it goes up for 5.5 years and down for 5.5 years. But obviously, I've got that wrong. Thanks for that, Stan. You just cleared up something for me there.
Yeah, no, you're right in that respect. But a complete cycle, if you look at a sin wave, 0 positive max back to 0, that's half a cycle. 0 negative maximum back to 0 is one complete silent cycle. Gotcha. Yeah, like a sin wave. Yeah. But they are peaks and drops between the 11 years. But to go around twice, because the polarity of the sun flips, you say, and then to come back, flip again to back where it was, it's 22 years, which is 2 cycles. But anyway, this is a bit old, because this is 2015. Well, actually, we're somewhere around about. We're pretty much bouncing along the bottom. But as you can see, this cycle got smaller than that one. That one is pretty much in parallel.
Yeah.
But this one here, this is cycle the one that we've come off, and we're down here now. Over here, that was cycle 23, and it was the smallest cycle since one of the smallest records for 100 years since records began. And I reckon there'll be not much of a cycle next time.
Sort of cycles are petering out a bit then, by the looks of it.
Yeah, we're going into what they call a maunder-and-dalton-minimun period, where the cycles wax and wane, the 11 years and 22 years. Like here, 1799, you've got this period here.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got this period here. This was known as the minimum. And then at the end of the...
Is that where we had the little ice age?
Yeah, kind of. But you can see these are individuals, and this here. I hate that when it comes up. That's the one we just had. Okay?
Okay.
Sorry. Oh, look. No, it ain't. Yes, it is. That's the one we just had. Well, you can see if you go all the way back, right?
Yeah.
You'd have to go back to here, which is nearly 100 years ago. It's just over 100 years. So we're going to go through this little pattern here. You see, there's minimums, maximums. There's cycles within cycles that the scientists don't want to handle. Right. And I'll show you here. But here we are here. There's a good little graph.
Ah, right.
You can see here there's various bits at 1600 to 1700. Well, there's bits of missing data. Well, this is during Galileo's times, and he used he's first to record the sunspots, and then he got burnt at the stake for it, as we know. That's history. But anyway, you can see this period here was called the maunder-and-dalton-minimun, and this is the famous frost fairs where the Thames froze up, and famous rivers in America froze up and whatever. And it was, you had a long period with very little or no sunspots. Like you see, you had another one here, right? And you've had two mini top cycles here cooling around about the beginning of the century. I think we're about here, but we're going to get at least, this is a Dalton minimum. I don't know if you've ever remembered that for some reason Charles Dickens wrote his novels in that period, and it was always snowing in Charles Dickens' novels, wasn't it? There's a reason for that, because they was going through another minute, not a maunder-and-dalton-minimun, which is a collapse of the solar cycles pretty much for 70 years.
Right.
This one was about 30 years, but it goes in between.
Okay.
But anyway, as you can see, we're due another, because there's one that comes around every 300 years. And, you know, that takes us up to present date. And these are hot sun, cold sun. The sunspots and the radiance of the sun decreases so much. And the actual mechanism within the sun changes. The sunspot heat changes as well. So I won't go into that. It's a bit too technical. But you can see that we're due a minimum sunspot and solar spot activity. Sorry,
Stav, even the people in the official circles have been saying, the ones that advocate the global warming, even they've said that this will cause a slowing down of the global warming. Well, that's what they'd like to say, but even they're sort of gradually admitting to the fact that this is gonna take us into a cooler period, a much cooler period, and that's people in official circles saying that. So so it does seem to definitely be a trend afoot, which is going to be hitting us over the next so many years. Nobody can predict exactly when this is going to take place, but I would say within at least probably it's going to get really cool within the next 10 especially 10 to 20 years, I would say. But yeah, so my point, the point I'd like to add, Stav, is if they're doing all this geoengineering, as we know, well, so they say it's for the purpose of geoengineering, where they spray the atmosphere with metal particles so that it will reflect the sunlight to cool the planet, then that could cause us a lot of problems. Maybe what we should be doing is to stop all this global dimming, which they're causing through the spraying of stratospheric aerosols, and allow the planet to just do what it's doing by itself, because otherwise that's just gonna make the problem worse, surely, because that's just going to make the planet even colder faster, and we don't really want to do that, do we, if we're naturally going into a cooling phase? What do you think, Stan?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a bit, I mean, there's so many theories about chemtrails and everything. It's it becomes a bit not hypocritical, contradictory. A lot of people have got their different theories about why, you know, these skies are being sprayed.
Well, they've already admitted to geoengineering, whether that is the genuine purpose of what they're doing and the real reason for why they're doing it. One can't say exactly, but they've actually admitted to geoengineering, and they've said it's for the purpose of cooling the planet and to cause a bit of global dimming. But whether that's the real reason or not, I don't know. But the point is, if they are doing it, it's going to agitate the cooling. It's going to make the cooling far worse and far more severe. Maybe they need to stop doing it, fast before we enter this period.
Well, yeah, I think it's the least of the problems, to be honest. I know it's there's a lot of thing about people think, that nanoparticles and all the rest of it, and aluminium and all the rest, and the other stuff, I can't remember the name of it, but barium, aluminium, strontium apparently, and other stuff like that. Yeah, and of course geoengineering, like you say, for the purpose of cooling the planet down, or so they put, or something, and obviously weather control, whatever, blah blah. There's a lot of it. I've done a bit into it, but to be honest, I've not done a lot of extensive research, and there's plenty of people out there that have done. And I think that's going to be immaterial anyway. I think people should watch earthquakes and volcanic eruptions to see if they start ticking up. Then you'll know that all these things happen during a cooling period, which shrinks the heliosphere and allows more cosmic rays to come in from other parts of the galaxy and universe. Which creates more cloud cover as well, which creates more cooling, and it's a kick-on effect. So I would say to people, me myself, I watch the earthquakes, volcanic activity, also sunspots, solar weather, and Adapt 2030 is a good guy on YouTube. I watch him. He's quite up. He gives daily updates on what's happening with local events and around the world to the extremes, and crop failures, all of these things. People, if they're interested in this, I would say keep an eye on that rather than being preoccupied with one thing, because there's a multitude of things that you're going to see some changes happen, and there's no getting out of it. They can't do it. It's not like a small asteroid is heading towards us and that Elon Musk can send a nuclear warhead up and ricochet and get it to avert Earth. This heliosphere shrinking, there's nothing man could ever do about that in a quadrillion years with all its science and its big brainiac ideas. So there we are. Not knocking the scientists. There's some good ones, but there's also bad ones, and everything in life, and science is no difference. But anyway, listen, I've dwelled on this too long. I didn't want to. There's plenty of information. I'll leave a link to this site. I could go on all night about this, but I've talked about it before. I suggest people go to something like this.
Right, Stav,
and
I've got a
click
little.
on these different links.
Oh, do you want to show anything else, or I've got?
Well, I've got a little bit about Fukushima a bit later on, but we'll get into that in a while. So I'll stop sharing the screens for the moment. So
yeah, I want to finish on climate change before we go on to the other environmental problems. There is one thing I wanted to play, or play at least a bit of it. So
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and screen share a minute. How do I do it? Hang on. Oh yeah, right. Okay. Bear with me, folks. Okay, if I click hide and then go to right, this is an old video about a geologist. But of course, when you look into climate change, you can learn a lot from. Let's get it up on the screen. Tell me if you can see that. Can you see that stuff?
Yep.
Okay. Right. Well, when you go into climate change, you look into the geology of Earth, and there's an awful lot you can tell about the climate when it comes to rocks, sedimentary rocks, and where all the CO2 is going. It doesn't just go into plants and life forms. It also pools on the ocean floor and things like that. It's really quite complex. One of the biggest movers of heat, convection, on the planet, the biggest movers of heat, on the planet is the oceans. With the oceans, it tends to absorb the heat. It takes a lot longer to heat the oceans, and of course it also then takes a lot longer for the oceans to lower global temperatures when the oceans are cooling, because it's a much slower process than it is with the air and the clouds. And you've got the of course the jet stream, which is the convection of heat through the atmosphere, and then you've got the Gulf Stream, which affects the flow of warm ocean currents and things like that. So anyway, I'm going to play a bit of this video. It's 14 minutes long. I'd like to get through as much of it as I can. This will give you an idea of what's going. Well, this is quite old now, this video, so I don't know if it's still appropriate. But let's have a look a minute. Hang on. When was this? Oh, well, it says 2011 there. I don't know. That's when it was posted. I don't know. how old this video is, but anyway, I'm going to play this for you and see what you think. This was a geologist that went to the UK government on climate change and the sort of lies that's been going on throughout the scientific community. Okay, here we go.
Of climate change, Professor Flux. Well, thank you for coming. I'm a geologist, and the one thing that we miss out on in looking at climate change is the past. Climates have always changed. Climate changes in the past have been greater and faster than anything we experience in our lifetime. And sea levels have always changed. Not by the modest couple of millimetres that people are having conniptions about, but we've had in the past sea level changes of only 1,500 metres. That's a sea level change. And if we look back in the history of time, the atmosphere once had a very large amount of carbon dioxide in it. It's now got less than 0.04%. Where did that carbon dioxide go to? It went into chalk, limestone, shells and life. And we've been sequestering carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere for only 2,000 to 500 million years. This planet has been degassing carbon dioxide since it first formed on that Thursday, 4,567 million years ago. Carbon dioxide is a natural gas. It has dominated the atmosphere for an extraordinarily long period of time, and we now are at a dangerously low level. If we halved the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we would have no terrestrial plants. Carbon dioxide is plant food. It is not a pollutant. To use words like pollution with carbon dioxide is misleading and deceptive. But the past gives us a wonderful story. In the past, we've had 6 major ice ages. We are currently in an ice age. It started 34 million years ago when South America had the good sense to pull away from Antarctica, and there was a circumpolar current set up which isolated Antarctica, and we started to get the Antarctic ice sheet. We've had periods of glaciation and interglacials. We are currently in interglacial. And during that 34 million years, we have refrigerated the Earth. But for less than 20% of time, we have had ice on planet Earth. The rest of the time, it's been warmer and wetter. And there's been more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And what did life do? It thrived. 6 of the 6 great ice ages were initiated when the carbon dioxide content of the atmosphere was higher than now. In fact, up to 1,000 times higher. So we have from the geological evidence absolutely no evidence that carbon dioxide has driven climate. For some odd reason, the major driver of climate is that great ball of heat in the sky, which we call the sun. You heard it here first. It's really quite unusual. And we change our distance from the sun. Every 100,000 years, our orbit changes from elliptical to circular. And we have a cycle of 90,000 years of cold and 10,000 years of warm. We're in one of those warm cycles now. And every 43,000 years, the axis of the Earth changes a little bit. And every 21,000 years, we get a bit of a wobble. Each of those orbital events puts us further from the sun. Every now and then, we get bombarded by cosmic rays coming from a supernova eruption somewhere out there. And if the sun's magnetic field cannot drive these away, we start to form low-level clouds. We've got extremely good evidence that this process has been going on for a very long period of time. Every now and then continents start to move, and they move at very rapid rates. They move about this much every year. And at one time, a continent can be over a pole, at another time it can be at the equator. Those moving continents change the major heat balance on the Earth. And that's the ocean current. The oceans carry far more heat than the atmosphere. Every now and then, because of major geological processes, we'll get a great bulge on the ocean floor of new volcanic rock. That changes ocean currents. Every year we have 10,000 cubic kilometres of seawater that goes through new volcanic rocks in the ocean floor. That exchanges heat. The reaction between seawater and the rocks stops the oceans becoming acid. When we run out of rocks, the oceans will become acid, but don't wait up. It will be a long time. We see 1,500 terrestrial volcanoes on planet Earth. We only measure 20 of them, and very few of those measurements are really accurate. But they tell us that a little bit of carbon dioxide leaks out of those volcanoes. But what we don't hear is that there are at least 3.47 million volcanoes on the sea floor which leak out huge amounts of carbon dioxide. We have got pools of liquid carbon dioxide on the sea floor. So early Earth's carbon dioxide, where did it go? It went into rocks. Where did it come from? It came from rocks. What did it do to the planet? We did not fry and die. We didn't have runaway greenhouse. Well, that's just geology. That's not important. So let's look at more modern times. In more modern times, we have drill cores that have gone through the ice sheets. Snow, when it falls, captures some air. That air is then trapped in the ice. We can later extract it from drill core and measure the amount of carbon dioxide in the air. And we can see with our cycles of glaciation and interglacials that when we finish an interglacial event, then we release carbon dioxide some 800 years later. So what's that telling us? It's telling us that temperature is driving carbon dioxide, not that carbon dioxide is driving temperature. Oh yes, but that's only hundreds of thousands of years ago. Forget that. We've been measuring temperature. The accuracy is plus or minus 1 degree Celsius for those ancient measurements. We are being told that this 0.7 degrees Celsius rise is going to create a disaster. I've only got to move over to here, and I've had a 0.7 degree Celsius temperature rise. Where do you people go for your summer holidays? You go to a warmer climate. We are creatures from the Rift Valley. We like warm climates. If someone from Helsinki moves to Singapore, there's an average temperature rise of 22 degrees Celsius. Singaporeans don't drop dead in the streets from the temperature. So we are creatures of warm climates, and we've been measuring temperature, and we have seen a slight warming from 1860 to 1890, and then a slight cooling until 1910, then a warming until 1940, so much so that the Northwest Passage was open, then a cooling until 1977, and then a warming until the end of the century, and now we're in a period of cooling. So we've had these cycles of warming and cooling. Strange that these cycles are actually related to changes in the heat balance in the oceans. So we have these 60-year cycles over a long warming event. We are in a period of global warming. It has been warming since the maunder-and-dalton-minimun 330 years ago. These were the times when you had the ice fairs on the Thames. These are the times when the Dutch masters painted hoarfrosts in bitterly cold conditions. That was the time when the sun was a bit inactive and we had no sunspot activity. So we're in a long period of warming. And one of the questions that I ask in this book is which part of the last 330 years of warming is due to human activity and which part is natural? These are questions that kids should ask their school teachers, and they're deliberately unanswerable questions. Because I am of the view that many children are getting fed environmental propaganda in the schools and are not being given the critical and analytical facilities to be able to dissect an argument. So we're in a period of warming. What's the worry? It's quite normal. And let's just look at history. The one thing that the climate industry, which it is, ignores is history. In Roman times, it was warm. It was considerably warmer than now. And we know that. They kept good records. They grew olives up the Rhine River as far as Bonn. They had wine grapes in Yorkshire. We know from their clothing that it was warm. Possibly they were going through an orgy, but I think it more likely it was warm. And that warming suddenly stopped in 535 AD. And we entered the Dark Ages. And at 535 AD, we had Krakatoa fill the atmosphere with aerosols. And it wasn't a big volcano. Only 30 cubic kilometres of aerosols go into the atmosphere. We've had bigger ones in Yellowstone. We've had even bigger ones in New Zealand, where 10,000 cubic kilometres of aerosols have gone into the atmosphere. And we pray for another one, because that's the only way we'll ever beat them at rugby. Just wipe them out. We had 2 volcanoes, one in Rabaul and one in Krakatoa in Indonesia in 535, 536. We went into the Dark Ages. It was cool. What happened? Crops failed. We starved. We had civil unrest. We had cannibalism. We broke out of that into the medieval warming. First to feel it was the Vikings. The seas became calmer. They could go further fishing. They actually went to Newfoundland, which they called Vinland. In Greenland, grapes and barley were growing. In Greenland, the graves were deep because there was no permafrost. It was a wonderful, benign climate, 5 degrees warmer than now. Eric the Red was saying, come to Greenland, it's a wonderful climate, and it was. And then we went through a period of silent inactivity, and in 23 years, we went from the medieval warming into the Little Ice Age. And that Little Ice Age ended 330 years ago. So what do you think would happen after a Little Ice Age? Do you think it'd get colder, or do you think it'd get warmer? The only reason that the arguments of science have got any traction in society is that they have been related to the last 30 years or 40 years of temperature measurements. I see with great interest the Met Office is telling us that this is the hottest year on record, but you might be on a different calendar to me, but I don't think this year's finished yet. And this time last year, I was in London, as I was the time before, the year before, and it was miserable. It was cold. It was very cold. So those sort of predictions made just before a big climate conference, one has to be very sceptical of. So in science, scepticism is not a pejorative word. In science, there is no consensus. In science, there are constant battles. A good example, we all knew that we got ulcers from an acid stomach and from stress. So we took pills and rubbed our bellies and hoped the ulcers would go away, until 2 scientists who were not following the mainstream, who were not following the consensus, were arguing that this was due to a bacterium. And no one listened. Ultimately, one of them took the bacterium, developed ulcers, took the antidote, and for that they get a Nobel Prize. You do not get a Nobel Prize for following the consensus or saying the science is settled. I believe we've had enormous corruption of science and the scientific method. I believe that the monies that are floating around for climate research, which is a current fad and fashion, are quite perverse. I believe we're putting science backwards, and come the next inevitable pandemic, we may not have the weapons to handle it. We might go waving herbs and chanting rather than creating an antidote. So this, for me, this climate industry has been a huge attack on the scientific method. It has been an attack on my science and history, and things, fortunately, are changing. I finish with one last point. You've got your Climate Change Act. We've just had a carbon tax in Australia. 19 bills went through Parliament. And our carbon tax is to lower the emissions of carbon dioxide from our employment-generating industries in Australia. And it's wonderful. We've led the world in suicide. And our carbon tax is to knock down our emissions by 5%. Now, you can do the sums. And the sums are very simple. The IPCC says that 3% of annual emissions are from humans. Why is it that that 3% drives climate change is beyond me and not the other 97%, but that's another matter. Australia puts out 1.5% of the world's CO2 emissions. You can do the calculations, and by Australia knocking back their emissions by 5%, we will, by the year 2050, have lowered global temperatures by 0.00007 degrees Celsius. So I do hope you enjoyed our sacrifice in giving you a warmer climate here in England. Thank you. Excellent.
Okay, it's an interesting little video. I like that one. I'll just switch that off. Oh, we've got Chrissy with us.
Hi, guys,
welcome
right.
on the show, Chrisy.
Hi guys, you're right. I'll be in and out tonight. I've got some visitors turn up and stuff, so I'm only in and out occasionally tonight, gents. Sorry about that. Family, family commitments. So, how you doing, gents? You all right?
Yeah, we're good. Thanks, Chrisy. Thanks for coming on tonight. We're on the topic tonight of climate change, and as you've probably seen by that video I just played, and also environmental issues. We've touched on climate change at the moment only. One thing I would like to say is that I've seen a video yesterday, I think, and it was they were showing that in Morocco, southern Morocco, they had snow for the first time in 50 years. So I don't think we can honestly say that this climate change is real. Or to the extent that they're saying that the global warming's happening and the planet's definitely seems to be cooling. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just one odd anomaly, but I mean, to be as far south as South Morocco and have snow, that's quite amazing. But
the thing that I'd go back to a little bit there, gents, was that guy that was just talking on there, Australian guy.
That's
Australia
right.
had a prime minister called Tony Abbott that actually said that solar power was depleting the sun.
Solar power was depleting the sun?
Honestly, have a look at Tony Abbott.
Yeah.
He's the former Prime Minister of Australia, and he actually went on record and said that solar power was depleting the sun. Honestly, can't believe a thing an Australian says. They're almost as bad as our lot, you know?
That's crazy.
That Tony Abbott has a Rhodes scholarship, so say no more.
Ah, there you go. Do you know what? I got a legal qualification from the. Hang on, I've got to try and remember. One of my friends gave it to me as a joke on my birthday, and it was from the the University of Rhodesia or something. A sort of like, a doctorate in law from the Rhodesian University. It was quite comical when I got it. So, but the thing is with the climate change and stuff like that. I mean, I think it's quite an easy way to look at things. The people in the world that are going to make money out of all this, they look to destroy and rebuild. They make their money from destruction and then rebuilding that. So it's a constant sort of slavery thing. It's constant expenditure of energy, and I think they're thinking, let's destroy the environment to then create. My dog's just let himself in the room. They've got an idea that they'll destroy the environment to then, create a cure for it. To basically.
I take it that drive everybody into debt. Their cure.
Yeah. I mean, if they destroy the environment, then everyone's got to rebuild the environment.
Exactly.
So the way they're looking at it is let's just go ahead and ruin everything so that we've got to rebuild it and therefore generate, because obviously with regeneration comes rebuilding, if you see what I'm saying. And
they play that out a lot with the wars, don't they, Chrisy?
Exactly right. Yeah,
not buildings and then rebuild them with borrowed money at interest.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's so short-sighted, guys, because the way I see it is, I mean, let's look at it this way, right? They build up a city and they put skyscrapers in it, and they make fantastic things that can help humanity. And then what they think is, rather than go one step further, let's take 10 steps back and destroy that so that we can rebuild that again. Which is the wrong way to look at it. You should consolidate what you've got. I mean, right now, in with the sort of technologies that we've got and stuff, the human race should be looking to be expanding our horizons, not just sort of like, continually building, destroying, and that seems to be, the bankers' method and the industrious method, to do things.
I know exactly what you're saying, Chrisy. Absolutely, you're absolutely spot on there. This seems to be the analogous with the banking industry in so many ways with their boom and bust cycles.
Yeah.
It's like our growth and contraction, and build everything up, knock it all down, and then and then lend you the money to rebuild with all this interest, and then compound interest, and so on and so forth. So
the thing that I really worry about is that maybe one day they'll get it wrong and we won't be able to rebuild. They'll be thinking, oh, sod it, we're gonna ruin everything so that we have to rebuild it, and then all of a sudden they might go, oh, maybe we've ruined everything a little bit too much. And obviously it's the vulnerable and the poor people that suffer the most.
That's right.
So they're the ones that are in the firing lines, first. So, I really do think that we should be widening our horizons rather than thinking, oh, sod it, let's rape the earth and, then rebuild it. Maybe they should be thinking, let's build and then progress rather than
thinking about long-term benefits to the environment and the planet rather than short-term profits.
Has anyone seen Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot?
Yeah, very good.
Oh, mate, that is absolutely brilliant. And if you've not seen it, I'm not too computer literate, guys. Someone wanted to put that up. It's 5 minutes worth of film. It is absolutely brilliant. And the basis of it is that, you're looking at the Earth from a very distant viewpoint in the universe. And, you see it as a pale blue dot. And everyone you've ever known, everyone that you've ever loved has been born here on the pale blue dot, and we are just a tiny speck suspended in a sunbeam, and it's quite humbling, and it makes good sense because this massive planet that is everything we've ever known is only a tiny speck, in the universe of things, and that should.
Chrisy, isn't it? Yeah. What did you think of that photograph in that Sagan? I think it was taken from Voyager, or one of the last pictures. Looking back, and how did that make you feel? It makes you feel unexplainable, doesn't it? A feeling when you're looking back at that tiny little spot.
Yep. Just to think that everything we've ever known and everyone that we've ever known, and it all happens on this tiny little globe. I mean, I do think it's a globe, and it's very what's the word? It's very humbling. It's, I actually used the music from that on my dad's funeral a couple of months ago. Because it sort of like kept me grounded, thinking that even though my dad isn't in this world anymore as we know it, he's passed, he's still on that pale blue dot, and his energy is still in that pale blue dot, and we're just we're a very small part of a very big thing, and we should look after everything we've got. It's these little bits of kindness, and it's the butterfly effect and stuff like that. If you haven't got respect for your environment, if you haven't got respect for everything around you, what have you got? What good are you as a person?
Apparently it's the only place. It's currently the only place we got that we can call home, isn't it, Chrisy?
Yeah. And it says that at the end as well. Yeah.
Funny you should say that about that humbling experience, Chrisy, because apparently this is what astronauts experience when they go out into space and they look back and they see the Earth getting smaller and smaller and smaller as they're pulling away from it. They get the feeling of this humbled, this sort of feeling that we're on this tiny little infinitesimally small little dot in the middle of space, and it sort of makes them, it gives them that feeling of humbleness. Excuse me. But thanks for coming on the show, Chrisy.
No worries. Like I said, guys, I won't be. I'll be in and out tonight because I've got a couple of family things to do. But thanks for having me more than anything else, guys. It's nice to talk to decent people.
You're always welcome, Chrisy. You're always more than welcome to come on the show anytime you want to interject and just pop in with your tuppence worth. Bring it on in, Chrisy. You're more than welcome.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
That's all right, mate.
Geoff, can I just say something about before we leave that? that climate business about that Australian geezer. I guess he was in Parliament. Well, it's monetized. They monetize everything, right? A politician would monetize their grandmother to get rich, right, and also to impoverish the poor.
Yes,
a politician would then sell. A politician would sell his grandmother to get re-elected. You know, these are the people you're dealing with, really. You know, and it comes down to, you know, I don't think. I guess like you and most of us in here, being looking back and trying to find, you know, being awake or whatever they want to call it, they take advantage of situations. If anything occurs and they can monetize it, you know, I don't actually believe they've got this all pre-planned new world order. To a certain point, I guess yes, but there's a lot of times when things happen that are not really in their control, but they'll take full advantage of it. And the
in an opportunist type fashion, Stav.
Yeah.
They're looking at it with a pound sign in their eyes.
Yes. Exactly, Chrisy. Yeah, I mean, it's not. It wouldn't be like it's the first time, would it? I mean, in the past we've had beard taxes. You know, grow a beard, and the longer your beard is, the more tax you pay, or something like that. And we've had window tax. And in fact, when they had the window tax, people were so poor and hard up that
break them up.
They brick the windows up. Exactly, Chrisy. That's just what I was about to say. Yeah. So, you know, they'll do anything to capitalise and, you know, make a buck any which way. I think they use the attitude, business is where you find it. Yeah. And that's first and foremost.
Here's one for you, gents. I had a quick look at fracking. I don't know if any of you are aware of it. But I've been meaning to do a video for a while, and I finally got around to doing it on Friday. So I've done a fracking video. And obviously, I like to try and know as much about it as I can, but you know, time is always short, so I have to try and research it very fast. But the fracking, what they do is they inject a lot of water into the ground, into the rocks to, you know, extract the gas, and the water is packed full of chemicals and you know, the salts and stuff like that. And currently they cannot make the water that they use for fracking fit for human consumption ever. They haven't got any technology or any recycling capability to make the water they use, and they use up to, I think, 10 million gallons of water per frac or something, and it's the equivalent of something like 10 Olympic swimming pools of water. So that water, I mean, they say, oh yeah, we take it to a recycling site. Well, what they do is they take it to the recycling site, and the recycling site say, can't use this, and they put it into the ground, into pools in the ground, and just leave it, and it then gets into the water table and starts poisoning sort of like, you know, nature and stuff like that. So, you know, and the thing is, they're doing it in the full knowledge that currently we cannot clean that water, make it fit for human consumption, and people are dying from thirst on this planet because how could you take something that is so is so vital for human existence, like water? I mean, after air, you've got water. You know, if you can't breathe, you're dead in a few minutes. If you can't drink, you're dead in a few days, probably. You know, and the thing is that, you know, everyone in this planet really should be aware that there are people dying because they've not got clean drinking water, which is completely preventable. And, you know, you've got people going, you know what, I want to get a bit of money from this gas that isn't even one of the best resources that we've got. And if I have to pump it into the ground and make it unfit for human consumption whilst people in this world are dying, but it's going to make me a few quid, I'm liking the bank account. How bad is that? That, you know, that is just the epitome of greed. You know, it's absolutely disgusting.
It's the epitome of utter madness, I'd say, Chrisy.
Yeah.
You know,
one of the checks, Chrisy, you might want to look into this. I went to the Balkan fracking camp a few years ago when they done the test drill down there, because it's not far from my sister's bungalow, and they were going to drill underneath. Well, that was the plan. But the checks against these fracking companies is the license they have to get from the environment, the water board, to be able to get rid of that waste. Now that's a problem for them. It always is, because if any authority gives them a license to get rid of that poisonous stuff that you can't put in the river, you can't put in the sea, you can't put anywhere because it's toxic.
They're going to put it in the sea, Governor. I think I've read, and please don't quote me on it, because like I said, I had to do a lot of research quite quickly, but I think either Norfolk or Lincolnshire have agreed that they can put it into the wash out into the North Sea.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, as if we ain't got enough trouble with our seas with Fukushima and stuff like that. You know, the fish stocks are badly dying. I mean, we need to give the fishing a rest, really. Anything that stands in the way of money, you know, I mean, they call it progress, but I call it greed. You know, anything that stands in the way of money nowadays, I mean, it's vandalism. If I went to a pond or a lake anywhere in this country and let loose a load of hazardous waste, I would rightly so expect to be nicked and prosecuted to the full extent of the law for doing it. You know, call it fracking. Offer the people the right money, you know, a few brown envelopes here and a few brown envelopes there, and they can get away with throwing it where they want, or as it seems, where they want. And
of course, they did all this without any accountability or any mandate from the people of the country.
Just a few bribes.
Just a few bribes from people in big business.
They do a few bribes, don't they?
Yeah. It's a sad state. I mean, thank you. By the way, thank you for bringing us in, because I just finished on climate change, and I wanted to cover different environmental topics today on the show. And you've taken us nicely into fracking there, Chrisy.
Cheers, bro.
Well, it's something we needed to cover, definitely, and we want to cover as many different environmental issues as we can today. So that's brilliant. And yes, it is one of the more serious things that's going on. Is probably the most serious thing that's going on at the moment in the UK. Anyway, I mean, we know that they've tried these fracking palavers in America, and it had disastrous results. They've had the same sort of thing in Australia with disastrous results, even to the point that people turn on their tap and the tap water comes out and they can literally catch it on fire.
We've all seen that one. That's terrible.
That's right. The chemicals remain in the water. That's the thing, and it gets under the into the aquifers and under the water table, like you said. And once it's under there, if you can't get rid of it, it's just going to fester there. And you know, I suppose this stuff would eventually, a lot of it would evaporate, so that the fresh water would come out of it into the atmosphere, come back down, go back under the water table, and then I suppose as it's gone back under it, it's mixing again with these chemicals over and over again. So, you know, this is...
So you've always got to think of the greedy little $1,000 suited corporate cocksucker, excuse my French, that's sitting in his office and thinking how he can make every situation into a win-win situation. And if you look at it, I mean, do you reckon the guy that sort of like first come up with the corporate guy that sort of like saw that video, you know, of the tap water being lit, I think it was an American lady that done it. Do you think that he instantly thought, oh my God, this is terrible, or I'm going to put a few million of my bank account into bottled water? Because that's what they're doing. They've got no actual conscience about what is going on. Everything is a money-making term, and not changing the subject to Brexit. But if you look at, you know, everyone was always asking me my opinion of Brexit, and it's all I could really say to them was that no matter what you choose, they're just going to use your decision, what you think you've chosen, to screw you. They're not going to worry about whether we're in or whether we're out. They're just going to use whatever the people choose as an excuse to screw us with. You know, and after the vote, no matter what way it goes, they're going to say, you know what, if you vote, you wanted this, and this is what you've asked for.
Exactly.
Either way, you know, and you've got these greedy corporate, you know, arseholes
And
that basically are just sort of like looking at every single decision that's made and every single policy that's created and deciding how they can extract the most wealth from it. And it's all to the people's detriment.
absolutely. I wanted to touch on another thing, what you mentioned there about drinking water and these nasty, filthy corporations and their disgusting activities. One such one, I don't know whether I should name names on this show, but what the hell, let's do it. Apparently,
No, do Cockney rhyming slang. Don't get chucked off the channel. Do Cockney rhyming slang or something.
Well, there is a company that's well known for breakfast cereals, also chocolate bars and things like that. Begins with an N and ends in an E. Say no more, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and nods as good as wink to a blind bat. Well, this company begins with N and ends in E and has an S and a T in there somewhere in the middle, I believe. Well, this company has been bottling up absolutely millions of gallons of water and then selling it back to Californians in California and places like that. So what they're doing is they're trying to corner the market on water to the point that everybody's forced to go out and buy bottles of water. And of course, as we know, if you put water in plastic bottles, that's not good for you either, because in the plastic bottles, they leach something from the plastic into the bottle, into the water, called BPA or bisphenol A. Which is an endocrine disruptor. So what that does is it messes with your hormones, your hormone balance and all this sort of stuff. So this is what they're doing. They're cornering the market every which way they can just to profit. And it's disgusting because, and apparently the bloke who, I don't know if he's still the CEO of that company, this nefarious company that begins with N, but he did say at one stage that he believes that water should not be a human right.
Yes, I remember that one.
How can water, of all things, not be a human right? I mean, that's disgusting saying something like that. It's absolutely appalling. It shows that for the sort of criminal attitudes that they've got. I mean, you know.
Well, in the States, there's a law against collecting your own water. You're not allowed to collect rainwater in the States.
Yeah, in certain states.
Absolutely madness.
You can't
Absolute madness.
Chrissy, you can't even grow vegetables on your front lawn in certain states because they say it's a council ordinance or something like that. I'm not sure. Sorry, come on in, Lopi. What were you going to say?
I'd like to. You were talking about landfill and everything, and I've done some research and stuff.
Yeah.
And well, for one, obviously, we all know there's two sorts of landfills. We have waste landfill, and we have our what I say waste landfill. We have black and solid materials,
right.
And we also have our home stuff. You know, rubbish, not
domestic waste.
Yeah, domestic waste. I couldn't think of the word. And I've got some information on how to reduce that and the domestic waste, and for the fact that the people that live near the incinerators that are getting rid of the solid matter and everything.
Right.
The people that live near there, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, they are higher in cancer levels. They're higher in birth problems, birth defects. They're higher in respiratory, cardiovascular. They're higher. They're the more ill people that are that live near the incinerators and domestic waste landfills.
Right.
Now, what's the solution? The solution is we start reducing the landfills. We start cleaning them up. Nobody wants to do it. Well, we've got all these migrant workers. Let's put them to work. Let's put people to work, not just cleaning up the landfill, but cleaning up our homes. Instead of going and buying the prepackaged meat in Tesco with on styrofoam that doesn't biodegrade, go to your butcher, go to the meat part.
Independent is best.
Paper.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same. It works the same way. It biodegrades, and it's cheaper. It keeps somebody in a job. You don't want to keep a robot or in a job. You want to keep the person in the job, and you get a good conversation. You probably get better choice of meat as well. Now,
like
as far
as Chrisy said, go locally for your meat and stuff like that. Support the local shops. Take the power away from the big multinationals and or the big monopoly supermarkets and that. Yeah, spot on.
I mean, it is something for you guys, and this is another corporate sort of greed thing that a lot of people don't realise. But I'll just ask yourself this question: if I was to present you with a present in a cheap brown paper bag, would you see it as expensive? Or if I was to present you with a present in really expensive wrapping paper that was perfectly presented and then in a box and blah 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 and stuff like that, what one whets your taste buds to have? So, and look at it this way, right? Let's say it was a hot cross bun, for instance, right? So you've got the same hot cross bun and you've got it in a brown paper bag, totally just literally in a brown paper bag, or you've got the same hot cross bun in a nice cardboard box that is then wrapped in very expensive wrapping paper. What one will you deem as the more expensive item? Remembering they're exactly the same. Well, packaging, their packaging ideas sells their cheaper product for more profit. And that is half the problem. I mean, we've got bananas being given out in styrofoam trays with cling film on them. Bananas. They're in their own natural protective packaging. You don't need to sort of like put anything on them, really.
The thing of it is, when we are, as consumers, we control what we permit. And hi, darling.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, little fella.
This is my little baby boy. Guys, I'm going to be back in a little minute. All right, I'll see you in a minute, guys. Love you.
Here's Chrisy. Take
Cheers,
care.
guys.
As consumers, we are the ones who dictate to the companies what we permit in our world, no matter what. The new iPhone. Well, the new iPhone is creating child labor. Well, we don't like child labor, but we want the iPhone. Yeah. Well, you can't have one or the other. Now, as far as recycling, reducing, instead of if you don't get the option of getting a paper bag,
demand it.
You can demand it. Take your old bags back to the store and reuse them. Use cardboard boxes in your car. You don't have to take them out of your car. Just use them for your every time you go shop. It's easy, convenient. It's not in the landfill. Plastic bags are yes, they're convenient, they're easy, and a lot of people are lazy. And that's the thing. We need to stop being lazy. We didn't use plastic bags in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They're a new thing used, and plastic is 90% used in the landfill, and it's in our waters for that matter.
Yeah, there's in the oceans and everything. There's supposed to be massive amounts of plastic in the oceans now as well, Lopi.
We know that. Well, there's a floating landfill in the ocean now. They call it the eighth continent because it's just a landfill.
It's just so there's absolutely tons of it. Yeah, and so it's like
the thing of it is, if we reduce things, we reuse things, and bring back glass, we demand it. Now here's the thing that's coming back to the UK and America is the milkman. The milkman, they're bringing the milkman back in small villages.
Excellent, because of course they put the milk in glass bottles, don't they, Lopi?
Yes, and it's economical. It's fit in your refrigerator. You're not wasting plastic. You're not you're reusing the bottles, giving it back. The company goes and cleans it, sterilizes it, and fills it back up again.
Well, that's what we used to do years ago, Lopi. We had the milkman deliver the milk in your gold tops bottles. Yeah, you had a little bit of tin foil on the top. But apart from that, when you finished the milk, you swilled the bottle out and you put it back out for the milkman. The milkman would then take it away and they'd be properly sterilized as well and all that. So they were reused. In fact, we used to get, your bottles of pop, what you in America call sodas. Well, we used to have Corona over here, and they used to deliver your bottles of pop, cherryade, lemonade, and all these different things. And what we used to do is we used to keep the bottles and give the bottles back, and you get money back on the bottles. Now, that's a much better idea, doing everything in bottles and then getting money back on the bottles. Pay a little bit extra for the product, and then if you're paying a little bit extra, you're gonna want to get that money back, aren't you? So you wash it out, give it back, and get like 5p back on the bottle or whatever it was then. Well, whatever it would be now, I don't know. But that would encourage people to recycle the bottles and use them again instead of throwing them away into a waste pit or landfill or whatever you want to call it. So it's just common sense. I don't know why they're not doing it nowadays. It just makes so much sense. It'd be so much better for the environment and things like that. Before you carry on, Lopi, I wanted to cover one topic which is particularly concerning at the moment, and I'm going to put a little article up on the screen for us about bees and what's going on. Different slightly.
What I wanted to say about that, I got something here. There is a man that patents a natural, non-toxic pesticide that could destroy Monsanto and many other agricultural companies, chemical companies.
Okay then, Lopi, you want to get that up on screen for us and give us a little talk about that? I'll cover my article after. Yeah.
All right. I'll put that here in the box.
Okay, well, just click the screen share. Get it up on the screen. Oh, do you want me to do it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll click that then. Hang on. It's redirecting me at the moment. Okay, I'll screen share it for us. 1 second, and I'll get it up on the screen for you. Here we go. Don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll read it out for you then, Lopi, and then you can have a little say about it after if you like. Man patents natural, non-toxic pesticide that could destroy Monsanto and many other agricultural chemical companies. And of course, as we know, Monsanto uses a thing called Roundup, which many people buy off of Monsanto to spray their crops in and things, and it's really bad for human ingestion. So it would be great to get us off things like glyphosate, which is in Monsanto's Roundup. It'd be better for our health and everything. So I'll just read this article. Is this the end for chemical pesticides? A leading mycologist has patented the world's first non-chemical pesticide in a move that could see the end of the chemical pesticide industry. Of course, they're not just known for chemical pesticides, are also known for GMO crops, genetically modified organisms. But anyway, it says fungi expert Paul Stamets has created a way of humanely destroying insects which feed off of and ruin crops. The number on insects that are actually damaging to crops is really tiny. Only 1 to 5% of the world's insect population, yet there are a whole multi-billion-dollar industries created around killing them off. Agrochemical firms Monsanto and Dow are two of the market leaders whose profits would drop dramatically if farmers across the world stopped buying their chemical killers in favor of a more natural alternative. The spraying of pesticides has become so widespread in the last few decades, and it is damaging the planet's ecosystems in unimaginable ways. In order to kill off bugs and parasites that are at risk of ruining crops, entire other species are being wiped out too. Insects that are needed to keep fragile ecosystems running. The disappearance of huge amounts of honeybees in the past couple of years at first was deemed a mystery to scientists, but on closer inspection, it looks as if pesticides are to blame. Stamets, mycologist, who specializes in the ability of different fungi, made his groundbreaking discovery back in 2006. And while he is still working on tweaking the idea, when it makes it to the mainstream, it will surely be the #1 pesticide choice for farmers. He discovered a special type of fungi which destroys insects from the inside out when it is eaten. In tricking unwanted insects to collect and eat the entomopathogenic, the insects are basically using pesticides on themselves. Sorry about that, folks. I had a problem with that word. Entomopathogenic. Okay, just had to practice that word again. Here we go. The method is so simple and does not have to be overseen by the farmers, who simply have to let nature take its course. Stamets made the remarkable discovery that the entomopathogenic, self-destroying fungi are highly attractive to insects in the early parts of their life cycle, and so persuading them to ingest the fungi was extremely easy. Although it might seem cruel to some, Stamets' patent is not interfering with nature or altering the course of the insects' normal lives. It just so happened that he realized the amazing potential benefits of using the self-destructive fungi for a better use. Stamets continues to work on his creation and hopes that soon it will be used all over instead of poisonous pesticides. I think that's the end of that article. Thank you for that.
In a way, what it's doing is not only killing that insect that eats it, it's basically sterilizing that insect from the inside out. You're not going to have any overspray or any excess insect that is not hindering the crop.
Yeah.
Whereas the regular chemical stuff that you get from Monsanto, there's a lot of overspray and a lot of not needed death of insects.
And of course, at the moment, that's
not
very
all insects in a farmer's field is eating the crops. We've got even to the point where it's detrimental to get rid of them. We've got worms. We've got all sorts of other animals in the fields that are affected by those Monsanto pesticides. And what happens when a worm is sprayed? A bird gets it. What happens when the bird eats that worm? It gets sick. What happens when another animal eats that bird?
We've got another knock-on effect as well, Lopi, because once the food chain's damaged, it knocks it up through the food chain. So we got something like 76% of all flying insect biomass is now gone due to different factors. And of course, that means that birds that live on insects are, of course, starving and going hungry. So a lot of these birds that rely on those insects are going to die off as well. And then that's going to go up the food chain to other animals that eat the birds, and so on and so forth. And it has a knock-on effect. Before you carry on, Lopi, I just want to see who we've got in here. We've got somebody who's just come in the room. Who have we got with us? Who's that there that's just joined us? Hello? Who's that that's just joined us? The one with the Google Holly Greek.
George Greek Trucker.
George. Oh, okay. Hello, George. How are you? You there, George? Okay. No, not speaking at the moment. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, on with the show. I'm going to play another article here, screen share. Not a video. It's just an article I want to read out. So I'm going to share this with you briefly before we carry on. And here we go. This was particularly worrying. I don't like GMO crops at the best of times or anything to do with GMOs because, of course, it's not nature's way. These are man-made, altered, genetically altered plants that Monsanto's been creating and other GMO companies. This one says 37 million bees found dead after planting large GMO cornfield. Now, a lot of this, of course, is going on in the United States of America at the moment, because they're a large producer of corn and soya and things like that. So look at this, handfuls of dead bees here. Millions of bees dropped dead after GMO corn was planted a few weeks ago in Ontario, Canada. Oh, this is in Canada, not America. I do apologize. The local beekeeper, David Shewitt, who produces honey in Elmwood, lost about 37 million bees, which are about 600 hives. Once the corn started to get planted, our bees died by the millions, Shewitt said. While many beekeepers blame neonicotinoids, or neonics, for colony collapse of bees, apparently is a condition called CCD, colony collapse disorder, they've called it. And many countries in the EU have banned neonicotinoid class of pesticides. The US Department of Agriculture fails to ban insecticides known as neonicotinoids, manufactured by Bayer Crop Science Incorporated. Well, we now know that Bayer is working together with Monsanto. So the two of them together is like a double whammy, which is sort of going to affect the environment quite badly, I think, if these two nasty companies get their way. Two of Bayer's best-selling pesticides, imidacloprid and clothianidin, are known to get into pollen and nectar and can damage beneficial insects such as bees. The marketing of these drugs also coincided with the occurrence of large-scale bee deaths in many European countries and the United States. Nathan Carey, another local farmer, says that this spring he noticed that there were not enough bees on his farm, and he believes that there is a strong correlation between the disappearance of bees and insecticide use. In the past, many scientists have struggled to find the exact cause of the massive die-offs, a phenomenon they refer to as colony collapse disorder, CCD, as I previously mentioned. In the United States, for 7 consecutive years, honeybees are in terminal decline. US scientists have found 121 different pesticides in samples of bees, wax, and pollen, lending credence to the notion that pesticides are a key problem. We believe that some subtle interactions between nutrition, pesticide exposure, and other stressors are converging to kill colonies, said Geoffrey Pettis of the ARS's Bee Research Laboratory. The collapse in the global honeybee population is a major threat to crops. It is estimated that 1/3 of everything we eat depends upon honeybee pollination, which means that bees contribute over 30 billion to the global economy. A new study published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences reveals that neonicotinoid pesticide kill honeybees by damaging their immune system and making them unable to fight diseases and bacteria. After reporting large losses of bees after exposure to imidacloprid, banned it for use on corn and sunflowers, despite protests by Bayer. In another smart move, France also rejected Bayer's application for clothianidin, and other countries such as Italy have banned certain neonicotinoids as well. After record-breaking honeybee deaths in the UK, the European Union has banned multiple pesticides, including neonicotinoid pesticides. Since you're here, okay, that covers what I want to put on that article. So I'll get rid of that a minute and try and stop the screen share. Okay, yeah, so bees are in terminal decline. Well, and it said there about the effect of, well, 30% of our crops being made from the pollination of plants by honeybees. So it just, that's, like it said, multi-billion-dollar industry across the world. So, it's in their interest to stop this sort of pesticide spraying because, of course, if they lose crops, it's going to mean they're going to lose money because of it. So it's a silly business model on the whole. I would say it's a stupid idea. It's not just stupid for the environment and dangerous, and for honeybee populations and other insects and stuff, but is also damaging for their own profits when it comes to crops. And I mean, I know some of these companies like Monsanto sell the seeds, don't they? What they call terminator seeds that can only be used once. You cannot use any seeds from the first generation heirloom, not generation heirloom, but from the first generation seeds produced by those GM crops. You can't use the seeds again. So then you have to go back to Monsanto and then buy new seeds of the same sort. So they're deliberately designed so that you can't use them again. So you have to go back and buy more from Monsanto, which is a crazy business model and not good for sort of the environment or people or anything else. So I just wanted to cover that. I think we've got to really be very, very careful what we're allowing into our environment through the soils and from the spraying of crops, not just for the sake of the bees, but also the humans that ingest these crops. What's this? George got no sound or microphone working. Is he with us? He's got no. Oh, you're saying he's got no sound or microphone. Okay, no problem. Well, he can listen to the show. He's quite welcome. Good to have you on, George. Anybody got anything they'd like to say about this colony collapse disorder and what's going on with the bees?
There could be several reasons. Monsanto and their Terminator seed and the glyphosate fertilizer and everything else. There is, there's was it factual evidence, shall we say? Well, let's just say pretty good, evidence to
did you mean several different chemicals that they're using as well as the glyphosate?
Yes, there's a broad range as the glyphosate, Roundup, and all the rest they're using. There's tons of other stuff, and of course there's the environment itself and what's what's happening to that because of other things like chemtrails and stuff like pollution. And there's tons of it, and with a little bit of an article later, I'll talk about Fukushima, for instance, which is still pumping radioactive material into the Pacific Ocean 7 years later. But we'll get to that in a minute. But it's the company who gave us Agent Orange, good old Monsanto.
Yeah. Well,
well, it's definitely the decline in the bees. Although I have heard that that they're making a bit of comeback because a lot of people now are making the effort to put in urban areas flowers and stuff and that sort of thing. And I think the figures are there's more urban bees than there are rural bees in England, apparently, or swarms. So I guess there are some positive things about the bees, but
what does that tell you? That sort of tells me that farmers are using these pesticides more than your humble back garden for your household gardener. Seem to
that's
indicate.
right. Absolutely. It's it's atrocious. I can't see that company's. Well, I know why that company's going. Again, it's to do with corporate greed, isn't it? And stock market.
Maximizing profits and things, Stav? Yeah.
Yeah, monetizing the death of the pollinators. How ridiculous and absurd. But there we are. Whether it's directly or not, that's what's happening, isn't it? But
well, they don't want to share their fruit and veg with the insects. They'd rather sell them to us. Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe that's one.
Yeah.
So thanks for that, Stav. I think PJ wants me to read an article. Do you want to get that? Is it actually?
I've sent you a link, Geoff. Just have a look at it first, because we might not have enough time to read it. So you decide on whether you want to read it or just pick
Okay.
bits out or whatever. And
Is that at the bottom of the list?
yeah, I'll put all links in description after the show. People can go back and have a look.
Okay, thanks, PJ. Appreciate that. Right, I'll just get that up on the screen and screen share for you. Let's just get that up. And oh, wrong one. Oh, where is it? Oh, it hasn't come. Oh, there it is. Sorry, beg your pardon. Can you see that? Can you see that? Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Lopi. Right, okay, this says the abuse. I haven't read this article myself yet. I've only just seen it for the first time. The abuse of vegetational concepts, the balance of nature. The balance of nature is a theory that says that ecological systems are usually in a stable equilibrium, homeostasis, as it is known, which is to say that a small change in some particular parameter, the size of a particular population, for example, will be corrected by some negative feedback that will bring the parameter back to its original point of balance with the rest of the system. It may apply where populations depend on each other, for example, in predatory-prey systems, or relationships between herbivores and their food source. It is also sometimes applied to the relationship between the Earth's ecosystem, the composition of the atmosphere, and the world's weather. The Gaia hypothesis is a balance of nature-based theory that suggests that the Earth and its ecology may act as coordinated systems in order to maintain the balance of nature. The theory that nature is permanently in balance has been largely discredited, as it has been found that chaotic changes in population levels are common, but nevertheless the idea continues to be popular. The use and abuse of vegetational concepts. This episode investigates how machine ideas such as cybernetics and systems theory were applied to natural ecosystems and how this relates to the false idea that there is a balance of nature. Cybernetics has been applied to human beings to attempt to build societies without central control, self-organizing networks built of people based on a fantasy view of nature. Arthur Tansley had a dream where he shot his wife. He wanted to know what it meant, so he studied Sigmund Freud. However, one part of Freud's theory was that the human brain was an electrical machine. Tansley became convinced that as the brain was interconnected, so was the whole of the natural world, in networks he called ecosystems, which he believed were inherently self-stable and self-correcting, and which regulated nature as if it were a machine. J. Forrester was an early pioneer in cybernetic systems who believed that brains, cities, and even societies live in networks of feedback loops that control them. And he thought that computers could determine the effects of the feedback loops. Cybernetics, therefore, viewed humans as nodes in networks, as machines. The ecology movement adopted this idea also and viewed the natural world as systems, as it explained how the natural system could stabilize the natural world via natural feedback loops. Norbert Wiener laid out the position that humans, machines, and ecology are simply nodes in a network in his book Cybernetics, or Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine. And this book became the Bible of cybernetics. Howard T. Odum and Eugene Odum were brothers. Howard collected data from ecological systems and built electronic networks to stimulate them. His brother Eugene then took these ideas to make them the heart of ecology, and the hypothesis then became a certainty. However, they had distorted the idea and simplified the data to an extraordinary degree. That ecology was balanced became an unexamined and unscientific assumption. Meanwhile, in the 1960s, Buckminster Fuller invented a radically new kind of structure, the geodesic dome, which emulated ecosystems by being made of highly connected, relatively weak parts. His other system-based ideas inspired the counterculture movement and set up communes of people considering themselves as nodes in a network without hierarchy, and applied feedback to try to control and stabilize their societies, and used his domes as habitats. These societies mostly broke up within 3 years, Also in the 1960s, Stuart Brand filmed a demonstration of a networked computer system with a graphics display, mouse and keyboard that he believed would save the world by empowering people in a similar way to the communes to be free as individuals. In 1967, Richard Brautigan published the poetry work All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace, which called for a cybernetic ecological utopia consisting of a fusion of computers and mammals living in perfect harmony and stability. By 1970s, new problems such as overpopulation, limited natural resources, and pollution that couldn't be solved by normal hierarchical systems had arrived. J. Forrester stated that he knew how to solve this and applied systems theory to the problems and drew a cybernetic system diagram for the world. This was turned into a computer model which predicted imminent population collapse. This became the basis of the model that was used by the Club of Rome, and the findings from this was published in the Limits to Growth. Forrester then argued for zero growth to maintain a steady state, stable equilibrium with the capacity of the Earth. However, this was opposed by people since there were no parts of the model that permitted political change and thus didn't permit people to change their values to stabilize the world. And also, they argued that it tried to maintain and enforce the current political hierarchy. Arthur Tansley, who had invented the term ecosystem, had once accused Field Marshal Jan Smuts of the abuse of vegetational concepts. Smuts had invented a philosophy called holism, where everyone had a rightful place, which was to be managed by white races. The 70s protesters claimed that the same conceptual abuse of the supposed natural order was occurring. At the time, there was a general belief in the stability of natural systems. However, cracks were starting to appear when a study was made of predator-prey relationships of wolf and elk, and it was found that wild population swings had occurred over centuries. Other studies then found huge variations and a significant lack of homeostasis in natural systems. George Van Dyne then tried to build a computer model to try to simulate a complete ecosystem based on extensive real-world data so as to show how the stability of natural systems actually worked. The computer model, however, did not stabilize. The scientific idea had thus been shown to fail, but the popular idea remained and even grew as it apparently offered the possibility of a new egalitarian world order. In 2003, a wave of spontaneous revolutions swept through Asia and Europe without any central control at all. Nobody seemed to be in charge except possibly the internet, and no overall aims except self-determination and freedom were apparent. This seemed to justify the beliefs of the computer utopians. However, the freedom from these revolutions in fact lasted for only a short time. The lessons of the hippie communes had been forgotten, where people had been bullied by others without any hierarchy to handle such issues. Adam Curtis closes the piece by stating that it has become apparent that while the self-organizing network is good at organizing change, it is much less good at what comes next. Networks leave people helpless in the face of people already in power in the world. That's the end of that article. Interesting stuff. Thank you for that, PJ.
Cheers, Geoff. You did well reading all
that. Thank you. Okay, how do I stop screen sharing? There it goes. Thanks for that. Well, we're sort of how long have we been going now? It's 9:43, so we've been I don't know how long you want to whatever topics you want to cover on tonight's show. We've covered colony collapse disorder and climate change, and we've covered fracking. What about Fukushima? Has anybody got any articles they'd like to share about Fukushima and what's happening on that front, or any articles there from?
Well, I have got. I won't read it. Obviously, it's not that not as long as the one that PJ just done, Mr. Tansley, eh?
Yeah,
must have been your uncle.
How do you think I came across it?
I was thinking.
So this article, you come from good stock there, PJ.
Well, thanks to Geoff for
Anyway,
reading it. Thanks to Geoff.
That's quite all right. It's a
Okay.
interesting article. Thanks for that, PJ. So, Stav, is this a video or an article you want to read?
It's just an article. If you want, I'll read it. It'll take about 5 minutes.
Okay, just for our viewers out there, just to explain what we want to talk about here is Fukushima. And Fukushima is, of course, the Daiichi plant in Japan that was hit by it's a nuclear power plant that was hit by a tsunami going back several years ago, and of course since then hundreds of gallons of this radioactive light water, or whatever they call it, has been going into the oceans and causing a bit of an environmental catastrophe in the local vicinity in the oceans. So which has been spreading out gradually, and I'm going to put it over back to Stav now to read this article. Over to you, Stav.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yes, indeed, about Fukushima. It's actually dated January 8th of this year, so it's pretty relevant to the time, and nothing's really changed with what's happening there. As you say, the tidal wave came in, and earthquake caused a massive tidal wave, which put two of them straight away in nuclear meltdown. But anyway, I read you the article, and you can draw your own conclusions. It's by Helen Caldicott, and I think she's or Caldicott. I've watched a few of her videos on YouTube, and she's really knows her onions, and she's really keeping the outside world up to date as best as she can, because obviously the mainstream, mainstream media, you'll get nothing from them.
Seems to be underreported. Seems to be vastly underreported.
Massively.
Yeah.
Massively, Geoff. So anyway, Helen Caldicott, the Fukushima nuclear meltdown continues unabated. Now, bearing in mind this thing happened in 2011. It's now 2018. Okay. It's still spewing radioactive material into the Pacific, and they say it's not, but it is. But here we are.
Right.
Well, it's just a preview. Before that, I'll get straight to it. So Dr. Helen Caldicott has devoted the last 42 years to an international campaign to educate the public about the medical hazards of nuclear age and necessary changes in human behavior to stop environmental destruction. You can follow Caldicott, blah, 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 complete curriculum. Below she explains recent robot photos taken of Fukushima's Daiichi nuclear reactors. Radiation levels have not peaked, but have continued to spill toxic waste into the Pacific Ocean. But it's only now the damage has been photographed. Recent reporting of a huge radiation measurement at Unit 2 in the Fukushima Daiichi reactor complex does not signify that there is a peak in radiation in the reactor building. All that it indicates is that for the first time the Japanese have been able to measure the intense radiation given off by the molten fuel, as each previous attempt has led to failure, because the radiation is so intense the robotic parts were functionally destroyed. The radiation measurements were 530 sieverts, or 53,000 REMs, a Rontgen equivalent for man. The dose at which half an exposed population would die is 250 to 500 rems. So this is a massive measurement. It is quite likely, had the robot been able to penetrate deeper into the inner cavern containing the molten corium, the measurement would have been much greater. These facts illustrate why it is almost impossible to decommission Units 1, 2, and 3, as no human could ever be exposed to such extreme radiation. This fact means that Fukushima Daiichi will remain a diabolical blot upon Japan and the world for the rest of time, sitting as it does on active earthquake zones. There's a picture, look. Robot image of Fukushima Daiichi Unit 2 reactor. What the photos taken by the robot did reveal was that some of the structural supports of Unit 2 had been damaged. It is also true that all 4 buildings were structurally damaged by the original earthquake some 5 years ago, and by a subsequent hydrogen explosion. Should be an earthquake greater than 7 on the Richter scale. It is very possible that one or more of these structures could collapse, leading to a massive release of radiation as the building fell on the molten core beneath. Units 1, 2, and 3 also contain cooling pools with very radioactive fuel rods, numbering 392 in Unit 1 and 615 in Unit 2 and 566 in Unit 3. If an earthquake was to breach a pool, the gamma rays would be so intense that the site would have to be permanently evacuated. The fuel from Unit 4 and its cooling pool has been removed. Well, I've done 4. But there is more to fear. The reactor complex was built adjacent to a mountain range, and millions of gallons of water emanate from the mountains daily beneath the reactor complex, causing some of the earth below the reactor buildings to partially liquefy. As the water flows beneath the damaged reactors, it immerses the 3 molten cores and becomes extremely radioactive as it continues its journey into the adjacent Pacific Ocean. Every day since the accident began, 300 to 400 tons of water has poured into the Pacific, where numerous isotopes, including cesium-137, 134, strontium-90, and tritium, plutonium, americium, and up to 100 more, enter the ocean and bioconcentrated by orders of the magnitude at each step of the food chain. Algae, crustaceans, little fish, big fish, then us. Fish swim thousands of miles, and tuna, salmon, and other species found on the American West Coast now contain some of these radioactive elements, which are tasteless, odorless, and invisible. Entering the human body by ingestion, they concentrate in various organs, irritating adjacent cells for many years. The cancer cycle is initiated by a single mutation in a single regulatory gene in a single cell, and the incubation time for cancer is any time from 2 to 90 years, and no cancer defines its origin. We would be catching radioactive fish in Australia, or the fish that are imported could contain radioactive isotopes, but unless they are constantly tested, we will never know. As well as the mountain water reaching the Pacific Ocean since the accident, TEPCO has daily pumped over 300 tons of seawater in the damaged reactors to keep them cool. It becomes intensively radioactive and is pumped out again and stored in over 1,200 huge storage tanks scattered over the Daiichi site. These tanks could not withstand a large earthquake and could rupture, releasing their contents into the ocean. But even if that does not happen, TEPCO is rapidly running out of storage space and is trying to convince the local fishermen that it would be okay to empty the tanks into the sea. The Brandstrahlung radiation like X-rays given off by these tanks is quite high, measuring 10 millirooms, presenting a danger to the workers. There are over 4,000 workers on site each day. Many recruited by the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, and include men who are homeless, drug addicts, and those who are mentally unstable. There's another problem because the molten cores are continuously generating hydrogen, which is explosive. TEPCO has been pumping nitrogen into the reactors to dilute the hydrogen dangers. Various areas of Japan are now contaminated, including some areas of Tokyo, which are so radioactive that roadside soil measuring 7,000 becquerels BC per kilo would qualify to be buried in a radioactive waste facility in the US. As previously explained, these radioactive elements concentrate in the food chain. The Fukushima prefecture has always been a food bowl for Japan, and although much of the vegetables and fruit now grow here is radioactive, there was a big push to sell this food both in the Japanese market and overseas. Taiwan has banned the sales of Japanese food, but Australia and the US have not. Prime Minister have recently passed a law that any reporter who told the truth about the situation, Prime Minister Abe that is, about the situation, could be jailed for 10 years. In addition, doctors who tell their parents their disease could be radiation related will not be paid. So there is an immense cover-up in Japan as well as the global media. The Prefecture Oversight Committee for the Fukushima Health is only looking at thyroid cancer among the population, and by June 2016, 172 people who are under the age of 18 at the time of the accident has developed or have suspected thyroid cancer. The normal incidence in this population is 1 to 2 per million. However, other cancers and leukemia that are caused by radiation are not being routinely documented, nor are congenital malformations, which were and are still rife among the exposed Chernobyl population. Bottom line, these reactors will never be cleaned. And I've lost my mouth. Hang on.
I can carry on with
we
that
don't
if you
want
like.
to go.
Okay.
No, I'm near there. Yes, all right. I'm near. Switch. That go. I don't want to go. Bottom line.
You're on the. You just read about the Chernobyl population.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, got it. Bottom line, these reactors will never be cleaned up nor decommissioned because such a task is not humanly possible. Hence, they will continue to pour water into the Pacific for the rest of the time and threaten Japan and the Northern Hemisphere with massive releases of radiation should there be another large earthquake. So there we are. We'll leave it there. I think that's it anyway. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So there we are. That's what's going on Fukushima. She's pretty good. Her name is Ellen Caldicott. Check her videos out. She talks all about it, and she's well up into nuclear reactions in the human body, and all the effects from radiation exposure from all these different things you get. Okay, that's that. And so there we are. It's very not covered very much at all anywhere really.
It seems to be like it seems like there's even a distinct cover-up going on to not mention it by the sounds of that, or what that article say in Stav. So
yeah, definitely.
Why would they cover that up and not want people to speak about it? This is the questions we've got to be asking.
Because of the environmental issues, that's why it's being covered up. The fact that it's the collapse of the nuclear building is a cover up is because of HARP, and because of the fact that it was a designed thing, because that's what they do. The powers that be, they create problems so that they can be gods when they have the solution.
Well, it's certainly an environmental catastrophe on what I would call a monumental scale. If it's getting into our oceans, and this is getting into the food supplies, and then being...
What is the powers? What is the 1%ers' whole point of anything? To reduce the population.
Yes.
What is Bill Gates and Melinda doing in Africa with their vaccines? What is Monsanto doing? What are the Bilderbergs doing? They're fueling it. Exactly. They are this is if they say, they're doing their part, and then they go and say, oh, okay, Japan, we'll give you X amount of billions.
Yeah.
Let's actually have your nuclear reactor building accidentally have a problem. Let's, and then we have a tsunami, and it causes everything else. We'll create the diversion out in the water that creates a tsunami that causes the reaction. But you just flip the switch, and what happens is you'll contaminate all the wildlife and waters around you, creating problems with the food chain. Food chain creates problem with the consumers. Less people will be able the people that eat it become ill, the less people that are healthy is better.
Well,
because we're going to make money off of them anyways, on their death, on their illness, because we got big pharma in our pocket.
That's right. Of course, you're absolutely right, Lopi, because like you're saying, it's going to be big business for the pharmaceutical industry because there's more people with ill health and things like that as a result of the Fukushima disaster. It's certainly an unprecedented disaster. I think it's probably, if anything, worse than the Chernobyl disaster because, of course, the Chernobyl is gradually, life is going back to Chernobyl, if I'm not mistaken, and so these radioactive disasters are absolutely the worst sort because it takes thousands and thousands and thousands, or if not millions or hundreds of thousands or millions of years for some of these radioactive isotopes to half-life or decay.
What people fail to remember is that nobody makes money off of healthy people. Yeah. Nobody makes money off of people who think. Nobody makes money off of people who can rationalize, put two and two together.
Yeah.
Oh, those are chemtrails, darling. That's jet fuel dissipating. It's a new sort. Okay. I mean, we see it all over on the internet of the dumbing down of America and other places in the world. Unfortunately, America is full of idiots. And it's the biggest one that everybody notices because there's so many of them. Now, yeah. Like I said, the number one problem with our environment is the 1%ers. They are controlling not only everything we can and do, but everything that we live with and without knowing that we live with. I'm not knowing, but control.
Yeah.
Like our air. Well, they control the air. And it sounds preposterous, but you and I are not flying chemtrails.
Absolutely. And it's clear to me that these chemtrails are genuinely a problem, and that they're definitely sending out something other than just fuel additives and things like that. So yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with you with what you're saying there, Lopi.
So in conclusion, because it's going on 10 o'clock, and I think we probably have been on a long time.
I think we definitely have to look into other ways of powering our societies other than nuclear power, because nuclear power in the short term might seem like a good idea, quick, instant power, from splitting the atoms, but the effects, if one of these things goes wrong, then it leaves disastrous effects for absolutely thousands of years and takes and can never be cleaned up. It's one of these situations that can never be cleaned up for all of time, as it said in that article that Stav read for us. So, if anything, it's only going to get worse as well if it gets hit by another earthquake or another tsunami or something like this. So it is a terrible state of affairs in Japan with that Fukushima.
So in conclusion of tonight, I think what I'd like to close out with is our impact on environment, because that's a big issue to me. Environment meaning nature, everything that includes the environment. Yeah. If we reduce the amount of stuff we put out into the world, the better we are. And how do we do that? We don't go and get more than we need. We don't use polystyrene. We use our butchers. We use our fishmongers. We go local. We get fresh produce from a local market. We don't go to the Tesco's that's got it all wrapped up and, price £2 when you can buy a lot more when you go to the market.
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah, I
you know,
agree, Lopi. I
reduce the
agree.
amount of our impact on the landfills. We force companies to give us paper bags instead of plastic. We reuse all of our plastic till it's unusable.
And of course, you can also
cut it up in small pieces.
And of course, what you could also do as well, some of these big companies could turn around, gather up all this plastic and turn it back into oil instead of mining new oil and things like that. Of course,
there's women in Eastern Europe and in Africa that use plastic bags and make carpets. They cut them up and they weave carpets out of it, and it's perfect. It's a great way. It sounds preposterous, and people are saying, "Oh, I don't have time for that." Well, you do have time to say, "Can I get a paper bag?"
Yeah. That's all good stuff, Lopi. Yeah, absolutely. It's all good stuff. It's little things we can do by ourselves to make a difference. And like you said, don't accept it when you go. If you go to a supermarket, if you're forced to go to a supermarket because you can't afford to shop locally or whatever, then say to them at the supermarket, I want this packed in a cardboard box instead of a plastic bag. Or, what are you doing? Have a go at the manager. Call the manager out and say, look, why is all this wrapped in plastic? Do you realize the amount of environmental damage you're causing? Harass them. Don't be afraid to open your mouth and, have a go at them. Because this is important. This is important. And the amount of plastic that's being poured into our environment, into the oceans and things like this is absolutely appalling. There are some new technologies, thankfully, though, that are some people I've seen, they've done some startup things whereby they've been managing to clear up some of the plastic in the oceans and things like that. So that's good. There are people coming up with ideas and ways of cleaning up the oceans and things like this. So it's
cleaning up the ocean is one thing, but cleaning up the world starts at home.
Yes, it does. There's definitely stuff we can do, but a lot of the responsibility has to fall on these corporations. A lot of the responsibility, they need to start taking responsibility for their...
We need to take responsibility, not the corporations. If we wait for them to tell us what they're doing, it's too late. We'll be dead.
Both of us
are the ones that employ them. We are the ones who empower them. We have the authority. We people as a whole need to stop and remember that we tell the businesses what we want. They don't tell us what we want. We are the consumers. If we don't buy something that they think that we want because it's wrapped in plastic or it hurts the environment or whatever, then they're not going to make money off of it, and they're not going to make it.
Exactly. We've got the power of boycott on our side, Lopi, like you said. It's demand, supply and demand, basically. So if you go out and you buy something with plastic covered on it, then that's like saying to them, that's okay, we want more of the same. So they'll produce more stuff wrapped in plastic. If, however, you turn around and say, I'm only going to buy that product because it's wrapped in paper, then that's a message to them that your demand is for a paper wrapped product rather than a plastic wrapped product. So they're going to produce more of the paper ones. So yes, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of things we can do.
I mean, there's some things that you can't go and say, I want it wrapped in paper. But, you can't be away from it all the time. But
yep.
But when you can, demand it.
When you can,
you don't have to get the minced beef at Tesco's that's wrapped in cellophane paper and in polystyrene. You go to the meat counter with the meat man.
Ask him to wrap it up in waxed paper or something rather than plastic. Yeah. That's one thing you could do. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Lopi. I think that gives people a bit of food for thought and on ways that they can help the environment, and maybe growing stuff in your own gardens for the bees, something that's bee friendly. Some plants like lavender, the bees love that sort of stuff. Honeysuckle.
Grow your vegetables. And
yes, grow your own veggies and fruit at home, so you can pull it straight out of the ground, stick it in the sink, wash it, and cook it up that way, rather than or put it in a cardboard box in your food larder, rather than.
If you buy scallions, you buy green onions, you buy celery, lettuce, anything that has that been from the ground, you can take the root part, cut it off that you just end up throwing away.
Yeah.
Put it in a bit of water within a week, or 2 weeks, it starts to have roots. You pop that into the dirt, and it'll grow. You've spent maybe a pound and a half on something that you are going to be able to reuse and re-eat over and over. Now imagine having a stalk of celery that for a whole month of you being able to reuse that stalk of celery for a pound.
Exactly.
It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like it takes a long time. But if we start doing it, we reduce, and we won't have this problem in the future. What do you think our grandparents and our great-grandparents did?
Exactly, Lopi.
They didn't have this amount of landfill in their time. They didn't have these problems in their times.
Well, by what I've read, what they do is instead of sticking it in landfill now, they ship it abroad, and they dump it on other countries, poorer countries, and things
because
like.
They got land, and there's no land for us for our rubbish.
Yeah, well, it's just disposing of like stuff for profit, and people pay in these countries to take this rubbish, and instead of them burying it, they sort of live in squalor in amongst these rubbish dumps and things. It's absolutely terrible. But anyway, I think we're coming to an end now tonight. Thank you, Lopi, for being on the show, and Stav. I think we're going to pretty much tie it up now. Appreciate you all being here, folks. It was nice to have Chrisy on the show with us earlier as well, which was great. We've covered quite a few topics. There's all sorts of other environmental disasters going on in the world, unfortunately, with deforestation and things like that. I heard recently that Monsanto were teaming up with the World Wildlife Fund to go into the Amazon rainforest and start chopping down the Amazon rainforest and replacing it with genetically modified crops, which is absolutely terrible. When I hear about things like this, and the World Wildlife Fund has got a reputation for, well, supposedly helping the environment and helping animals, why are they getting involved doing this stuff with companies like Monsanto? Have they lost the bloody plot? What is going on in this world? It's crazy. I don't know what to say about that. To me, it's ridiculous. I wouldn't fund the World Wildlife Fund if they're going to start doing things like that. To me, it'd be a case of boycott them and have nothing to do with them. But that's just my little take on it. You can't trust a lot of these charities, unfortunately, nowadays. Anyway, I'm harping on again, and we've come to the end of the show now. Thank you for all our guests on the show tonight. PJ, Lopi, Stav, Chris is not here now, he's already gone, and thank you for coming in as well, George. I'm going to wish you all a good night and God bless, and catch you all again next week. Take care, folks.